Video review. You do not appear to belong here. Clearance and lineage required.
Hermod on behalf of the Aesir, with a directive from Odin. High upon the orbital string, I seek entrance.
Too Human is an action RPG full of false starts and unrealized potential. It will lift you up only to continually let you down. For example, just as the story gets good, the credits roll seconds later. This kind of disappointment is found everywhere in the game, from story to combat to balance. Too Human's not bad, but its elements feel really stitched together. As for those story threads left dangling, the disappointment is compounded by the thin narrative leading to them. Too Human is a retelling of Norse mythology with a cybernetic twist, where the Aesir, the gods, are bionically enhanced humans protecting normal folk from the onslaught of Loki's army of machines. Sadly, developer Silicon Knights expects you to have some familiarity with that source material. If you don't, you may get confused, and ultimately, the story will ring hollow because you have to fill in the gaps on your own. You play as Baldur, one of the Aesir. You'll take on 4 main missions during the short 10-hour story, and while Baldur has different goals each time, the process is the same. Beat up a bunch of mechanical beasts en route to an end boss. The whole thing's pretty linear, and most of the levels are standard science fiction fare. You'll also spend some time in Aesir, where you're able to purchase weapons and armor, and in a lush world called cyberspace. These areas have something in common. They're too big. Aesir in particular is way too large and doesn't have a lot of people roaming about. As you make the long, boring walk to find out your next mission, you'll wonder if there was supposed to be more stuff there. It's one of many examples of Too Human's biggest problem: poor pacing. The good news is that when you're in the thick of combat, you'll find yourself having some fun. There are 5 different classes at your disposal, but regardless of which you play, you can use both melee and ranged weapons. Melee action looks like something you'd see in Devil May Cry, though it doesn't really play that way. Rather than mash buttons, you use the right analog stick to connect to your enemies. Provided you're within range of a target, you'll actually slide in that direction, and when you're zooming around like a madman, slicing stuff up and flinging enemies into the air, you'll be experiencing the game's greatest thrills. The system works well most of the time, though sometimes the camera and the controls make it tough to make contact with the right foes. It's not as thrilling as stringing button-based combinations, but when it works well, you'll still get into that smooth action RPG groove. Unfortunately, Too Human never keeps that groove. Guns can be fun when used in combination with your melee attack, but the targeting system doesn't work that well. You can flip between targets with the flick of a stick, but you might target an enemy outside of your field of view, or you'll simply find yourself shooting at nothing at all. Other issues can get annoying too, like the way status effects like radiation and freezing last way too long. Most classes don't let you regenerate health, and since there aren't any potions, you rely on finding health drops as you fight or smash open objects. But because the environments are so big, you might watch as Baldur dies from the stupidly long radiation effect, and you're powerless to do anything. So you'll die, and if you play multiple times, you'll find that you'll die more often as some classes than others. Either way, your items will take some damage and they'll become less effective until you repair or replace them. So the in-game consequence isn't bad. The real-life consequence, however, is simply a bad idea. Each time you die, you have to watch a long, unskippable animation in which a Valkyrie comes slowly down, takes you into her arms, and lifts you slowly towards Valhalla. It looks really awesome the first few times, but eventually it's just awful to have to sit through this drawn-out process every time, and it's hard to believe that anyone thought that it was a good idea to punish the player like that. On the other side of the coin, the RPG stuff is pretty good. There's a constant supply of cool armor and weapons, and in a nice twist, you can dye your stuff to match, something more RPGs should let you do. You can also find and purchase blueprints to craft items of your own and enhance them by adding runes to them, which enhances your stats and attacks in various ways. The skill trees for each class are varied and broad, letting you customize Baldur in lots of interesting ways. You'll earn a particular battlecry skill, like being able to increase the speed of your attacks, and you can also summon a spider bot, which will rush out on its own to do different types of damage depending on the route you choose. The game looks decent enough, and the cool armor sets and pretty Valkyrie character model are some of the highlights. Overall, however, each environment seems much like the last one, and the combat and facial animations are rather stiff. The musical score and sound effects are mostly good though, and while not all of the voice acting is that great, the actor playing Baldur is rather good. But really, what's up with that weird swoosh and crash every time you jump? It doesn't fit in at all. Whether you're looking for a good action game or a good role-playing game, there are better choices for you on store shelves.